and welcome to the States of Matter, a podcast from the Institute of Refrigeration's Women in RACHP network. I'm Karen Perry, and always here with me to co-host is Lisa Jane Cook. As we continue our theme discussing subjects of interest for our industry's women, we're excited to welcome two inspiring women in engineering who have both, like Lisa Jane, been shortlisted in Women Engineering Society Top 50. Jacinta Caden and Laura Bishop, welcome to both of you.
Thank you very much.
I won't spoil your biographies by introducing you in just a few quick sentences, as I'm sure there's a lot to say, but we'll ask both of you to tell us about yourselves, what you do, a bit about your career history, and what being a female engineer means to you. Jacinta, tell us a bit about your background first.
I currently work at U-Systems. We manufacture cooling solutions for data centres and micro data centres, and we supply globally. So it's manufactured here in Bedford, and I currently work as the technical sales manager here. How I started out in the industry was I did an apprenticeship in refrigeration and air conditioning with a contractor in Dublin. So I spent 4 years on the tools, off the tools, in and out of college over that 4-year period, as well as working on site, mainly with retail, commercial refrigeration systems, air conditioning systems, VRF systems, in a variety of bases, which would be, cold stores, hotels, restaurants, butchers, warehouses, all that kind of stuff. And that's where I kind of got my career started. I was a bit late in starting, I suppose. I already had a career, and I decided at the age of 22 to just move and do something that I actually was interested in. I grew up in refrigeration, air conditioning business, electrical, mechanical, kind of haulage as well. So I was kind of already had an idea about what it involved. So I suppose an apprenticeship to me was just a natural next step. From then I left my apprenticeship, and then I went to work for a wholesaler where I was doing technical sales engineering, and that was supporting contractors that had inquiries that came in. They wanted, we'll say, cold room equipment. So they would ask me to spec the equipment that would go into that space. Spent 10 years there, so I got to know much of the products, condensing units, evaporators, air conditioning systems, manufacturers, suppliers, all the technical kind of aspects of the various valves and components that also go in with the equipment as well. So 10 years after there, then decided to go into sales and work for a manufacturer in data center cooling. They made DX and chilled water systems, not similar to what I'm doing now, but again, it was data center orientated. Moved on from there to kind of contracting, where I was doing business development for a contractor who would service and maintain industrial refrigeration sites, equipment, critical environments, again, data centers as well. And again, went into project management, selling for project management consultancy kind of work in the data center sector. So it's been kind of varied, but the foundation of my knowledge and experience was coming from having done an apprenticeship. So that's how I started, if you like. So I don't know about Laura, how she fared out and if it was the same or not.
Thanks, Jacinta. I've never met Jacinta, so it was nice actually to hear some background from her as well. So a bit about my background. I started out doing engineering when I was 18. So I did a BTEC in engineering after failing my A-levels and not knowing what to do next. But my dad's actually an engineer, so I sort of thought, maybe I could do that. So I went off and did a BTEC and then went to university, did engineering there. Then I moved up to Derby, worked for a company called Bombardier, who are now Alstom, working on their graduate scheme. So I was designing London Underground trains for them. So I've had quite a varied career when I look back over it. So it was 22 years ago. So I'm actually a mechanical design engineer by background rather than a refrigeration engineer or a building services engineer. But over that time, I've worked in lots of different companies, doing a lot of stuff. Started out on trains. Then I went to Rolls-Royce because I live in Derby. So there's a lot of engineering companies here, which is a great place to be. So went to Rolls-Royce, designing hydrogen fuel cells, which is interesting because obviously there's a whole debate now about hydrogen for heating. Then I've had a brief foray at Babcock doing nuclear submarines, working on their next generation submarine program, and then went to E.ON because I really, really wanted to get into renewable energy, but I wasn't quite sure at the time what that meant because lots of people think just about electricity, but I knew I wanted to do something along them lines. My dad is a big environmentalist, even though he probably wouldn't say he was, but so it's always been there in my background about being conscious of the environment and waste and how we use our energy and stuff. So I knew I wanted to get into that, and I went to work for E.ON in their microgeneration team as their engineering manager. We were doing a lot of solar PV, rent-a-roof type schemes back then, and then went into their commercial heat team when the renewable heat incentive started. And that was my first experience of heat pumps. I'd actually done a master's degree at Loughborough University in that time as well, in my spare time, in renewable energy systems, which covered nothing to do with heat pumps, nothing to do with heating or cooling whatsoever. It's all very electricity focused. So going suddenly into the world of big biomass and big heat pumps was like, wow, what's this all about? And it was actually really, really good. I absolutely enjoyed that so much and began to realise the importance of generating heating and cooling from things that were not being burned, like gas and coal and oil. I was at E.ON for a bit, and that gave me a great insight into the industry, and I made loads of contacts, had some really great suppliers. And then, well, basically I was given the opportunity to have redundancy, which some people say is a bad thing, but actually I thought, oh, maybe I could set up my own consultancy and be self-employed. And I thought, no, I couldn't do that. And then I thought, oh, okay, let's try it. And I thought, I'll try it for 4 months. And that was nine years ago, which is bonkers. So basically went from being at E.ON, designing large heat pump systems, to doing it on my own. So basically over the last 9 years, I've run Infinitas, which is a consultancy based in Derby. I've had a lot of graduates come and work for me over time. A lot of my suppliers became my first customers. So I've had the whole experience of setting up a business, running a business, as well as now designing a lot of heat pump systems, a lot of them on the renewable heat incentive. That sort of helped the business to grow quite a lot, actually. So thank you, government, for putting that out there. And the whole decarbonisation piece has changed so much over the last 10 years, really. Now I'm the chair of the Ground Source Heat Pump Association. So I'm very, very much involved in the ground source industry, although we also design a lot of air source heat pumps as well, especially if there's like big commercial buildings like universities and schools and hospitals and things like that. But yeah, it's just such a different market now from where it was 10 years ago. But basically, that's where I am now. And we're just about to go into a partnership. So after 9 years of being on my own, I'm just about to merge the company with another company. So we're going into partnerships. So it's quite exciting. So that is basically my career background in a nutshell.
Laura, you kind of followed maybe the university route, where Jacinta talks about apprenticeships. And I think firstly, Laura, for you, kind of through that at university, I suppose if your master's was in quite a different subject to maybe what you expected, how did you find that with being a woman in that learning process? Were you alone? Were you against sort of others, or?
It's funny, really, because the BTEC I took was a Women into Engineering BTEC, and I started that in 1997. And I think of all women that were on that course, about 35 women, only 2 went on to do engineering. And I don't know how much further forward we are now. But that aside, when I was at university, there was 2 women and 40 blokes, whatever, in my year. That made absolutely no difference to me whatsoever. I didn't really see that as a problem or even as an issue, really. But it has definitely always been a thing through university and going through work, that it is still very, 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 very man heavy. But yeah, never encountered any problems. It was noticeable that there was a big dearth of women at university.
And I think that's it. It's, very similar to you. We don't feel it in our everyday, but sometimes, yeah, you do see it in a meeting or with an experience that you kind of think this is odd. And when people look at us as an industry, it does probably look quite male heavy, which is why we want to attract more women into the industry.
I was going to say the same thing. I think I was the 3rd girl in Ireland to have done refrigeration and air conditioning as an apprenticeship. And I don't think we're that much further on. We've had I know definitely one more since, who I've met, but when in my class at the time, there were 2 classes running at the same time. I was the only girl in that year to have gone through, and there was 34 of us, maybe something like that, altogether. In the colleges that I went to, we were definitely a minority. There were definitely more, we'll say, electricians and plumbers maybe, but refrigeration very thin on the ground. I suppose I never saw it as a thing because I suppose I kind of grew up. I felt it was normal to do what I was doing. I definitely didn't think it was strange because I grew up doing this sort of stuff. I was constantly surrounded by, all sorts of refrigeration equipment and trucks and trailers and mechanics and fitters and tire people and all sorts of, men that were doing jobs. And I would go to work with some of them, just because I was just always interested, and it was just that visual aspect of it was just something that I was just so accustomed to. So I never once felt out of place at work or in college, because it was just so familiar to me. So I never thought of it as a thing until, I suppose, I moved to the UK, 14 years ago now, and all of a sudden that there was an interest in kind of trying to raise awareness about the rarity of somebody like me. And it was only then I thought, oh, maybe I am rare, or maybe we should do something about this. So again, like Laura, it was just not even crossed my mind, to be honest. And when I look back on it, now that I'm getting more involved in these kind of conversations and committees and all sorts of different groups and things like that, I still try to think back really hard to wonder, was there anything that I could have picked up on to bring forward to my story now? And no, not really. Sort of similar but different, the same but different, aren't we? I suppose the way we saw it, but also the two different routes we went down. It wasn't that one training route was different to the other in the way that we felt or the way that we were within those organizations, so.
There's a couple of really interesting points that I've taken away from both of your situations. The first is that our environment can play a contribution to the direction that we go in, and you both have been in environments where engineering is, so you've almost, like Jacinta said, where she didn't feel out of place, you've had that around you, so that sort of probably pushes you towards that. And we talk a lot about, obviously, role models, and just sort of relating that back to the topic that we've got with you guys with the WES Top 50. Getting an award like that is recognising you as role models. So you come to the place that you are because perhaps of the environment that you're in, but now you have that opportunity to help to attract more women into the industry. But I wonder perhaps what you think the barriers are. So what it is that women are not finding attractive about engineering. So could I ask Laura first what you think the issue is?
I've asked myself this question quite a lot. I mean, I'm also a STEM ambassador, and I don't do as much as I'd like to because just of time. But, when I do go into schools, I go into primary schools. I like going to primary schools because you get the kids when they're young. And I think if they're not surrounded, maybe they don't have parents or somebody working in an engineering environment, or they have somebody who's, this is what I see a lot, they see somebody who's a mechanic, a car mechanic or something like that, and they think that's engineering. If you don't have that around you, then it's not something you're ever going to think about. So if you're 9, 10, 11 and you're seeing a lady come into school and talk to you about what they do for a living, and they're wearing not mechanics overalls, then maybe that's sort of going to plant a little seed. I think, first of all, I don't know whether teachers even understand what engineering is, therefore they can't teach it in a way that is real. Do you know what I mean? Like, we're really talking about this is what we do on a day-to-day basis. So they're not getting taught it, which is not teachers' fault at all, but there's not enough of us going into schools and saying, hey guys, you could do this. And I'm actually talking about boys as well, because I also think that boys don't understand what engineering is, and I think there's opportunity for both because we're strapped for people in the industry. But I think it really is, it does stem back to that, there's still, even after all this time, there is still that thing about what girls do and what boys do, and unless you get in there very early when they're young at primary school level, I think they already have these ideas formed in their heads, unless they've got somebody around them that says, hey, you could be an engineer, you enjoy physics, you enjoy fixing things, you enjoy understanding problems, you could be an engineer. But if nobody tells them that, they're never going to know.
Yeah, I agree. Career guidance in my school was, when I look back on it, poor. We had one career guidance teacher, and if she didn't know about it, I mean, what chance did we have? You know what I mean? And I also agree in that unless somebody in the family or some friend or somebody that they know is in engineering, it's very hard to get them to even be aware of it. We could also reverse this. I've got 3 sisters. We didn't grow up with private jets on our drive, but yet that's where my sister works. So how come they appealed to her? She knew she was the only one out of us that knew exactly what she wanted to do when she grew up. And she still is doing it, and she, pursued that. So I think it's because our industry is hidden. We all are aware, even from back in my day, what an airplane was. So, and it was also, we'll say, maybe glamorized a bit more because it was something so cool, being able to fly from one country to another or whatever. And then when it comes to refrigeration and air conditioning and heat pumps, it's not something you see. Like, that airplane wouldn't exist if it wasn't for what we provide. So it's because it's hidden, and trying to make something attractive that's hidden is really, really difficult. And I think that's what the problem is. Engineering is one thing, but our industry is another. Engineering is a subject as such. You don't take refrigeration in school, do you? You don't go, unless you're really doing an apprenticeship sort of thing. So there's a whole, it's just about the visibility of it. I think that's what the problem is, more so than anything else.
I think in schools now, and kids, because they're so interested in the environment and a circular economy, that heat pumps certainly becomes a lot more exciting and glamorous to talk about. Glamorous maybe not, but yeah, a bit more exciting to talk about. But I think as well, when we try to look at with STEM, is looking at refrigeration and how involved it is in everything that we do. And I think that's where it is. It's talking to the kids. You said it there, Laura, about it's not just a mechanic or a car mechanic, about the vast ranges. And I think that is people from the industry going into schools and talking to young kids and getting them interested about it.
Yeah, definitely. I think because it's really interesting what you said, because I've never thought about it before as being hidden, but that's absolutely what it is. It's, you can't live your life without generally what engineers do, everything from putting your kettle on in the morning to having electricity coming into your home so you can switch your lights on. But people don't think about what's behind that, and I don't blame them, because why would you? But yeah, you're right. I think with the whole new focus on sustainability and the environment, and I think this climate anxiety that a lot of young people are experiencing, there is a lot more interest in renewable energy. I still think we have a long way to go, because, as I said before, when people talk about renewable energy, they immediately think of wind turbines. The fact that heating is heating and cooling is much bigger than electricity to deal with in terms of climate and carbon and all that. People just are not thinking about it, so it is another hidden thing. You come into your house, it feels warm, okay, good. You don't think about, well, how is my radiator getting warm? Unless you were a bit that way inclined. Most kids probably are not that way inclined, but I think the only thing we can do is have an army of us going into schools on a very regular basis and talking to as many kids as who will listen. And some of them will listen, and some of them will hear that and think, yeah, I am interested in that. I want to know more about that. But until we go in and explain, this is what's happening, on either, Jacinta just covered it there, about aeroplanes, refrigerants, and de-icing and all the fluids and everything that goes on inside an airplane so the airplane wouldn't work without all of that side of things, and the air conditioning, because you basically won't be able to breathe. It's those sort of things that then makes them think, yeah, I never thought about that.
Even in the manufacturing process, when it comes to manufacturing certain elements for the aircraft or components that go into it, there's process cooling that's required and all this sort of stuff. So this call wouldn't take place if it wasn't for cooling. Their phones wouldn't work if it wasn't for cooling. Like, if we can explain it in that way, for example, something that they can relate to. They can't live without TikTok or Netflix or whatever it may be. Like, none of that can happen without cooling in some fashion.
You'll have to make some TikTok videos, Jacinta.
Oh, you're joking me. I couldn't even get my camera to work today. So.
That's totally exactly the way I always get the kids' attention, especially if I'm talking at senior school level. You go in, you say, I work in refrigeration, maybe talk a little bit about what that means. And then you say to them, without refrigeration, your phones wouldn't work. And they're all just like, what? And it's then they're listening then, they're interested at that point.
Yeah. And even if you think of it, our whole even right up to mortuary level. It's not going to go away. It's an industry that's around for a very long time and is trying to get the interest in, them realizing that the opportunities and the longevity in the industry. So it's not like a passing phase. It's been around and it's going to be around. It's just how we make it, like Laura said, more sustainable, more energy efficient, all that sort of stuff is how we need new ideas, new people into the industry. But the problem is the fact that it's hidden.
I think we all agree. I think, again, that just highlights why it's so important to have role models, not just female role models, but other people within our industry standing up and talking about what we're doing. And that definitely is improving. I think I see a lot more manufacturers and consultants going out into their communities and sharing what they're doing, not only to attract people into STEM, but for their future talent. And it also helps to retain staff as well, because it is incredibly rewarding having that opportunity. I think we don't talk about that much, do we, about how it actually makes you feel as an individual when you get that chance to actually share something back into your community.
Yeah, I think also with employers and everyone, when they're struggling to get somebody to come and fix a certain problem, or they have a call out, something like that, they soon realize that they have to start investing into making an effort to attract people, because we can't, I say this time and time again, we can't rely on people just to fall into the industry. Like probably most of us here, or all of us here, could have, I would say I fell into it. I probably didn't want to do it, but if I was to have my time over, I'd do something else maybe. So we can't rely on people just to fall into it, like we have been doing and we continue to do. So we are making a change, obviously, by making an effort, a conscious effort to go out and about and, raise awareness. But that's a start. It's still a long way to go, because we're still hearing about stories about people crying out for skills, in every aspect of all the sectors. So,
Yeah.
So, sorry, I'm going to backtrack a little bit, because I had two questions off the back of you both talking about sort of your educational experience. The other question relates to not about whether you felt out of place, but how you actually felt you were received by the men. So I know, Jacinta, you said, because you were in that environment growing up, you didn't feel out of place going to college and being the only woman. But actually, how did the guys on the BTEC feel about that?
So is that for me or Jacinta? Sorry, Lisa.
Or either one, you can jump in first.
So I think, when I went to uni the first time, because I think it was all young lads. I was a couple of years older, because as I said, I went through my A levels first, and then so I was 2 years behind. But I can honestly say that I don't think there was ever any sort of raised eyebrows, or what are you doing on this course, or how strange, or anything. It was just complete accept, not even like an acknowledgement or an acceptance. It was just like, okay, whatever, that kind of thing. So all through university, I made some great friends who are actually still friends with me now. But yeah, at no point did I ever feel that I was different, or I shouldn't be there, or they made a thing about it. So yeah, I can honestly say it was not a problem.
Yeah, I'd be the same. When I look back on it, nobody batted an eyelid. Nobody really, to be fair. But on site, you'd be lifting condensers or whatever it is, particularly like for split systems. They didn't care, whether you get some guys that would be like, oh, here, I'll take the heavy side, aka the compressor side. But some of them would still let me lift the heavy side. Like it just wasn't a thing. You were just there to work and you just got on with it. And I never was like going, oh, he gave me the heavy side. Oh my God. That didn't enter my mind either. But now doing these, when you get these questions, it makes you think about the little things. And, there was no, I would say, no mercy. It was just, you're just another human. Yeah. Male or female didn't matter. I don't think I was received any different. Now then again, if I met some of them again and maybe asked them what did they think, I might get a different answer, but nothing was ever apparent to me.
I'd actually say that now all this time later, maybe sometimes I see, I don't know if you're going to come onto this, Lisa, so sorry if I'm jumping ahead, but that was 20 odd years ago. Now I sometimes think, you know, I go on site all the time, and I think sometimes men are a bit surprised, especially if I go to see a client and I turn up on site, and maybe they'll be like, oh, does she know what she's doing? Does she know what she's looking at? Do you need some help? Shall I open the door for you? I don't mind men opening the door for me, by the way. But I sometimes think now people are more questioning. And I think, gosh, have we gone backwards? And I cannot think of a specific example. It's not like I have ever been discriminated against that I can think of. But I do sometimes think now that when I turn up on site, that people instantly go, oh, I didn't expect that, you know. And afterwards, you know, it might only be a fleeting moment, and then we get down, you know, and carry on doing what we're doing, and, you know, it's gone. You know, we just carry on. So that's the only thing I can possibly think of. Well, the other thing I was going to say was that when I went on my graduate training scheme, there was a couple of other girls in the engineering bit as well, and one of them did make a big thing about the fact that she was a female engineer. She used to walk around all the time going, I'm a female engineer. She actually said that. And I think that actually riled people. So I think if you're of the mindset that this is a job, I'm just going to get on with it, I'm going to try and be as good at it as I can, and I'm going to treat people with respect, you actually get that back. If you make a big deal of it, and I think that would be the same whether it was a male or a female, you might get treated a bit differently. But I think if you just there and get on with your job, then on the whole,
I agree. Yeah.
And as you mentioned earlier, it's about nurturing everyone early in their careers in this industry to close that skills gap as well. Male or female, it doesn't necessarily matter. I guess maybe people are more aware of it now that it might get mentioned more, whereas maybe 20 years ago it was just assumed you weren't there to do what you were there to do. But yeah, I think it is just getting on with the job, and let's all work together and support each other.
Yeah.
I suppose, as you know, older, longer standing members of our industry, to look out for others, so not just the young women but the young men, and encourage them to actually speak out if something isn't right or they don't feel right about something. Because I certainly know when I look back over my career, there were many situations that I probably should have said something that I wasn't, you know, quite happy about. And it can be really silly things, like when you're sat in the office, someone comes in for a delivery and they immediately make a beeline for you because you're the only female in there. And that's, you know, again, this is not my work, you know, there's a desk you can go to, but they've just seen you and they think, right, woman, she'll know what I'm supposed to be doing, or she'll take this. And you just tend to get on with it, don't you? You just like, oh yeah, I'll sign the paperwork and go and look at the palette or whatever. And, you know, maybe I should have said no, that's not why I'm here for. I work in the design department. But, you know, so I think it's using that experience and that knowledge to try and help younger people just be more comfortable and actually speak out for themselves.
Yeah.
Oh, I should have probably, oh my God, if I thought about it, you know, there's plenty of times, and it works in both directions. You know, it could work in my favor, work against my favor, you know, and speaking up and saying something. But yeah, we're all guilty. Well, I speak for all, but I would safely say we're all guilty of that.
I suppose sort of rolling on from what we were saying earlier about sometimes when people are surprised to see you on site or at a particular meeting. Laura, do you have any funny stories where perhaps something like that has happened, or just something that's made you say WTF, like what has just happened? Because I'm sure we've all got one or two.
I would have to have a good think about that. I think, funny enough, the only thing that comes into my head is when I turn up, because I always have my hair coloured different colours, and people usually actually comment more on that. And I'm like, does that make me not able to do my job? Sorry, what has that got to do with anything? But I think probably the only time that where I've thought that is, gosh, this is actually quite a funny story, and this is nothing to do with refrigeration. This is when I was working at Babcock, and I had to go up. This is one of the best, actually. It's one of the weirdest and the best things that happened in my career. So I had to go up to Faslane, which is the nuclear sub base in Scotland, and we were replacing one of the seawater pumps. Actually, it was on the cooling system, so it was a bit cooling related. When I got there, one of the guys there that I was working with had his so it was very hot in the boat, and he had his overall on, but it was completely open, like exposing everything. And I was just like, really? Is that really appropriate, seeing as I'm sitting here? I mean, first of all, unprofessional. Hello, I don't want to see all of that. Thank you. And also, I am a female, So and that was a time when I probably should have said something, and just sort of went, "Oh my goodness, I'm not even going to look." So yeah, maybe that.
You just think about that if that was the other way around. What would be said, if anything?
Yeah, so actually, I don't know what to say to that. I just don't know how should I react to that? I don't know.
I can almost go through that. I don't want to make a fuss. I don't need to make a fuss. Why should I make a fuss?
Yes.
But yeah, actually, yeah.
Because I'm so used to just being blokes. I was probably one of the only women that's ever been there to do that job, and they're just so used to doing it whatever they do, and blokes do whatever they do, and not all blokes, sorry, but these particular ones.
Yeah. As you're talking there, I'm trying to think like what any comments I've ever got, apart from completely inappropriate ones and situations that we've I've been put in the past, but it's got nothing to do with my job at the moment. But I have my Class 1 driving license, and when I was doing my lessons, I got proper lessons eventually, and people were surprised, like people passing by, when my instructor would get out of the truck and he'd watch me reverse or do whatever it was, he'd always get back in and go, people are surprised by my size that's able to control this big thing. I'm only short, but it's just people have this perception of what you should look like. And my biggest thing at the time was, back then, the pedals were really heavy to push, because to get to brake, it's not like a normal car. It feels quite different. I had to just buy big boots, not bigger than my feet, but just big heavy boots to help me. But they didn't know that. They just saw this little head above the the windscreen trying to reverse this thing. That was probably the only time, really, I suppose, that wasn't wrong, but it was just I started to realize then that, oh, maybe this isn't what people just think is right to look at when you look at something. You know what I mean? Like you with your hair, it's like, oh, you look different. So what's wrong about that? But that was probably the only thing I can think of, really.
It's a really cool, like, lesser known fact about you as well, isn't it, Jacinta? Class 1 license.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. I hate saying it. Well, I don't hate saying it, but it's just, it sounds weird. I love the smell of and just the dirt and the grease and all that kind of smell that you get when you're around trucks. I love that smell. And it's something I grew up with. And even when there's deliveries going by my window here, I love the noise of the trucks going by. I'm on the motorway. I love them. Everything about that. So it's people who know me well will probably know that about me, but it's another level of passion.
Did you just decide to do that because it's something you wanted to do, or did you have to do that through work?
My father had a haulage company, and he used to travel the continent, and he had a number of trucks and trailers and all that were always coming and going. And he did his own service and maintenance in the yard at home and stuff like that. So I grew up with that. And it's just a smell that just know with my eyes closed, it's just, even his overalls, you would get that smell, kind of mixed grease, everything mixed together. So it's just something I've always wanted to do. And I set myself this goal that by the time I turned 25, I was going to have all my licenses. So I did my coach, I did my rigid, I did my Arctic, I did them all. So that was something I wanted to do and did do, and I still keep that going. I still have all the, all my medicals and all that up to date as well, just in case. You never know, you need something to fall back on.
You never know when you might step into a truck and drive it home. I like that. It's almost like that's your homely smell, maybe.
It is. It's just like, you hear a song that reminds you of holiday. It just brings you back to being at home as a child again.
My dad was a painter, decorator, and I love the smell of fresh paint if I kind of walk in anywhere.
Yeah. I still love my mother's cooking and stuff,
Yeah. It wasn't just trucks, it was nice food as well.
Not all about him.
Yeah. That's brilliant.
That's really cool. It's funny as well because Laura, you're saying about the overalls, or the guy with the overalls, and just for some reason it triggered a memory in my mind when I used to work in the factory. So I used to work twilight shifts in the factory manufacturing heat exchangers, and that was part of my apprenticeship, was to get to know the product inside and out and build it. And where I worked, the female locker room, which had like 4 lockers in it and 2 toilets, was always flooded, so you could never get change in there. So I had a locker in the men's like crew room, and like after you saying that about the way he was sat, and I suppose it was the way they were used to, it's made me wonder about what they used to think about me having a locker in their locker room and changing with them. They had showers and all sorts in there, and I never felt out of place. Yeah. And I didn't have any issues going in there. But now in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, oh, actually, you know, they probably really hated me invading their space.
Well, they probably had to cover up a little bit more.
That's what I was thinking. Maybe they were used to just walking around with nothing on. Now they're like, oh my God.
We have an imposter.
There were probably all sorts of rules set without you in involvement, Lisa Jane. Yeah.
But it also highlights as well the fact that the women's locker room was never used in the factory. The fact that it was always flooded. There was something wrong with the toilet, and it was like that for the whole time that I worked there. They never repaired it. So it just goes to show the demand for that space was really just non-existent.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, that is a thing, isn't it? Because I've worked in a few places like that where you've been on the shop floor. Maybe when I was at Bombardier, I used to work away a lot in depots and in the manufacturing bits, and the times you go into the female loos and basically they've just used the storerooms and everything was cobwebby because it's been so long since a woman's got into the toilet. So yeah, that also rang that bell with me when you just said that. The one thing I do have a big problem with is when you go into a factory, and I can't believe this still happens, and they have calendars of naked women. That's a thing for me. It's just like, no, I'm sorry. I mean, I'm quite a laid-back little person, but I don't think there's any place for that nowadays. Sorry if any blokes are listening. Well, really, you shouldn't.
Yeah.
It's funny you say that, Laura, right? I got sent a calendar by a supplier one time.
Really?
Yeah. And I opened it up because my name was on the envelope, and I was just, this is before, like, you know, I think it was the first time ever I got irate. I was so annoyed. I was like going, why do you think I would want this? Did you not read, you know, did you not do your due diligence on who you were sending these out to? They just made a blanket assumption that everyone would want this calendar.
Mad.
And
I think you're right, male or female, and yeah, sack the marketing manager.
I just thought it was just, I thought that the form of advertising was so antiquated and behind the times. Like I just, because I don't know, it just hit me that day. And I decided to find out exactly who to speak to. And I rang them up and I gave them a piece of my mind because I didn't appreciate it. Now, had they sent me a male calendar, I probably wouldn't have had such a fuss, you know? It was just, it's just the assumption that, and that drove me mad that day. And yes, I was living in the UK for sure. So in the last 14 years, so I was well old enough to realize that this was just like such a backward, in my opinion, way of marketing. And I was more annoyed about that, more so than it being a female calendar. It was just the fact that I was just, can you not think beyond this? You know, there's more ways to market yourself nowadays. But yeah, so they are still a thing. Well, they were 14 thereabouts years ago.
Were they apologetic, or did they?
Oh, he was, yeah. I never received the next year's one. You know, he was apologetic, but you know, I was just like, don't be so presumptuous. Do you know what I mean? For their sake, you know, it could have, I don't know, gone pear-shaped totally, but I just, rang them up to let them know that.
Probably mortified to get that phone call as well of, oh God, this woman's ringing me about a calendar.
I know. When I look back at it though, like, I mean, it was silly, I suppose, because now it probably wouldn't bother me, but it was just that particular day, I wasn't happy.
Yeah. And I think you're right as well. Yes, is that the only way you can kind of market yourself? But yeah, I've certainly seen some, probably in more recent times than 14 years, but yeah, very rare, thankfully.
Yeah, I was going to say one of my first office jobs, again, because it was very male dominated, there were those types of calendars everywhere. And I managed to get them taken down pretty swiftly by putting up a semi-naked fireman calendar next to my desk. And there was an email the next day that said, all of these calendars are coming down. And that was that, because it was obviously so offensive to the guy.
You were more
like,
offensive
oh
than, yeah.
That's
it's a great
funny.
move.
I myself have gone to sites and see them everywhere and in garages, and oh my God, that's not the problem. The fact that it was like, it's like as if it was a personal thing because it was sent to me. You know?
Yeah.
I have no problem with them. It's just because it was addressed to me, I had the problem or something. I don't know.
Keep it at home, not the office.
It's a question of what's professional, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
So moving on a little bit, we wanted to know a little bit about your career highlights. I mean, we've obviously, again, we've touched on the Women's Engineering Society Top 50, but Laura, what's been sort of a real highlight in your career?
So I met you, Lisa, earlier this year at was it the Air Conditioning and Heat Pump Awards?
It was, yeah.
So that night I won the Woman of the Year, which was completely and utterly unexpected. And the fact that a couple of people had nominated me for that was like mind-blowing. So that was definitely a highlight. I think also just the fact that I hate blowing my own trumpet, but I guess wondering if I could set up a business and run it and actually have customers, and then doing it and then having customers that come back and want me to work on their projects again, and being able to employ people. That's like a highlight that sort of happens, and I am aware of it obviously, but it's sort of happened without me sort of planning anything. So yeah, having a successful business is also obviously a highlight. So yeah, that's it.
Making that jump, taking that opportunity and setting up your own consultancy is a massive thing. And the fact that you succeeded, 9 years down the line, it's now at the state that you're at and you're going to merge, it's incredible. So you should be really proud of that.
Oh, well done.
What about you, Jacinta?
The most shocked I ever was, I suppose, was same as Laura, winning the Woman of the Year 2019. I actually was hardly able to hold it. I was so mortified as well as shocked and pleased, and oh my God, that sticks out because I still have to look at the pictures and go, oh my God, I didn't take one good picture because I was so shocked looking. But, so that was probably a highlight, yes, for sure, because it was the first one, totally unexpected. And when I look back on it, yeah, I should be proud of myself. Being appointed onto the IOR board, after 119 years, being the third person, I think I was, third female, was another highlight. Not a highlight at the time because, you're just getting on with it. But now that I look back on it, yes, that's probably another highlight. I've had plenty good nights out, if that counts. And I suppose another nice thing to know that is, the equipment that I've sold or put together and spec'd and all that, over the 10 years I was with one particular company, I haven't had any comeback, which is something I don't think about and didn't think about at the time. But now that I look back on, my career for highlights or for, sense of achievement, I suppose I'd pick probably things like that.
I think something that I always look at with you, Jacinta, and maybe you haven't thought about it, is your role judging the National Student of the Year Awards.
Oh my God, I love doing that. Yes, I love it. I love it.
It's testament to how passionate you are about the young people in the industry, and it puts you in a really strong position as a role model for our future talent.
Yeah, thank you. I didn't think of it like that, but I absolutely love that because I don't know, it's just hard to explain. You can see some people apply year on year, and you look at the applications, you see the type of applications they put in. You like some of you judge as well, different categories, so you can appreciate the different kind of entries, and you can really tell how passionate somebody is by their entry, and what their highlights are. What you you just get such insight into the youth that are coming through. And I love that. I absolutely love that. And I think it's important to reward these people. And I get disappointed then when some people don't enter, and you know that there's more talent out there and their companies aren't behind them. And I get frustrated with that, because I think, oh my God, you know, the results that they could get from this is really, really good. And if they just invest and all of that. So mainly it's a good thing, but I also see it as a way to try and raise more awareness about people who don't get involved. But yeah, no, I do really enjoy that category, because I think it's important, and it's also because I can understand where they're coming from, because I've been an apprentice, I've been out on site, I understand the environment that they're in, and I don't compare to mine, but also I have got something to bring myself back to. I wonder what, you know, kind of stage they're at. I wonder what age this person is, because you can kind of gauge where or how well developed they are at that stage as well, if you know what I mean.
It's such a responsibility, isn't it, to be able to do that, and it's good that you're so passionate about it as well.
I am passionate about it, and I suppose I don't know, maybe it's because I just understand. I don't know why, I just am.
I think we all love that passion, and I think we're all equally passionate as well.
Oh, for sure, we all have our own little flavors of what we like, what we, you know, what we don't like, what we're more passionate about, it's just a natural thing. You know, what committees we like to sit on, what, like, you know, initiatives we like to get involved with. It's just something that, because you can't make yourself get involved if it's not something that you're interested in or you can't really contribute to, you know. So we all and we're all different, and even if we all sit in the same committee, we'll all have different opinions as well. So, you know, it's really important to have the more brains the better, I suppose.
I think that's the committees and the networking is so important, and talking to you ladies today, but also the networks that we built with the IOR as well is kind of how we've really found each other and got to know each other. Yeah. Listening to your moments and your achievements, it's just clear you're kind of only really not even midway into your careers, and those achievements will continue. And it's nice that it's not looking back. It is actually, yeah, this is just the start of it, really, and exciting. And yeah, great to be mentors and let young people come into the industry and witness people like yourselves who are supporting others as well, and not just doing it for yourselves.
Yeah, and I think being part of the IOR, you know, really opened up, for me when I was on the board, it really opened up opportunity to get involved. Like Lisa Jane, I think you're on your second term now, and it just opens up so much more opportunity to get involved and have your say, and to, you know, have an opinion and make changes and all of that. So, like, you know, I don't think without the IOR I probably would have bothered with half of the things I got involved in or been aware of, like, you know.
Yeah, I think that's probably quite a good takeaway point as well, isn't it? You know, sort of you've both got to really good positions in your career, and you've had slightly different paths. But what you've both done is taken those opportunities. So when those doors have opened, you've walked through them. So I'm just going to ask Laura, if you could give one like takeaway or a closing point or a piece of advice to our listeners, what would that be?
A couple of things. Don't ever limit yourself. Don't think, oh, I can't possibly do that. I know sometimes it's natural, and I still do that even now. I couldn't possibly do that. But to try to put that to one side in a way, and just think, well, if I want to do it, there is every opportunity to do that. So if you want to get into engineering of any type, and if you want to get into refrigeration, if you want to get into heat pumps, we need you. So there's every opportunity to get involved, and try to find the people who are going to build you up and encourage you, like Jacinta, in fact, like all of us on this panel today, and try not to be too influenced by those around you who might be like the naysayers, because the opportunity is so huge. You don't want to be pushed back by maybe a couple of naysayers. So it's really to be encouraged that yes, you can do it, And it doesn't matter if you're a girl, female, you can do it, absolutely. And to try and find that person or people who will encourage you. So, you know, the IOR is a really great place to come and say, hey, I would like to do this, but I'm not quite sure. Can I talk to somebody? Then we're here, you know. So, yeah, I'd say just go for it because we need you.
Thank you. And Jacinta?
For me, it'd be listen. Nobody is that good that they know everything. Listen to advice, listen, you know, just listen to what people say, because, you know, it's important. You know, you might learn something. I would say for anybody coming into the industry, find a good employer that's willing to invest in you and, you know, get involved in other activities and things like that, not just have you working 24/7, because I mean, if you are really good at what you do, you will be rewarded, whether it's financially or through referral work or, you know, whatever it is, you will be rewarded. Mentors, I think mentors are key to just, you know, even ourselves. Would I say everybody here is a mentor? Yes, in some description, yeah, or inspiring at least. We all can share similar ideas, and it's great to be able to bounce that off somebody. You know, if I start talking about my job at home to my sisters, they automatically switch off. So I won't go talking to them. I'll try and find people who are like me, and that, you know, we can mentor each other kind of thing by just having a conversation. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, I would say listen for sure. Mentors, employers, good employers, and good advice, and take opportunities that make sense.
Thank you, Jacinta, for that, and thank you, Laura, as well. Really nice talking to you both, and I think even those last final sentiments are just really good things to actually go away and think about. Really appreciate your time. It's been really, really nice to talk to you, and hopefully, yeah, get to see you both very soon at maybe winning an award or just a good night out at some point. Thanks, Lisa Jane, as always, and thank you everyone for listening. Hope you found it interesting and inspiring. Please do download the rest of the series and keep an eye out for any social media posts where you can listen again, see what's next, and share with your colleagues, and even tell us what you want to hear more of. You can get more involved with our LinkedIn group, which is IOR Women in RACHP. Please help to spread the network wider with your colleagues, but please also get in contact if you'd like to reach out about anything or get more involved, and we're always happy to support.